Welcome to Life by Design, episode 385. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Horatio Jug.
Happy to be here, as always.
We are creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, we're talking about the environment for mental health. This really is a challenging time, obviously. And when it comes to mental health, I know there's lots of resources right now. I've seen podcasts and blog posts and videos and people talking about mental health. And you brought up a great point, Horatio, which is really the foundation of today's podcast, which is you need to have an environment to grow something, and mental health is no different.
Yeah, so this came because exactly what you said. I think this is the most important information I can give anybody right now. There is a lot of stuff on mental health. It's all on tactics. It's all on what you need to do to have good mental health, which is fantastic. However, in order to support mental health, you need to have an environment, right? Like you can write books and read books and get information on growing a tomato plant and everything that's required to grow a tomato plant. But if you're trying to plant that sucker in Antarctica, it's never going to grow. So we can't drop the context of we need an environment conducive for you to have mental health. And right now, and actually for the longest time, we're just seeing it accelerated even more based on what's happening right now. We do not have that environment, which is one of the reasons. There's many reasons, but in my opinion, one of the reasons, and this is why I struggled with mental health in the past, why people are not achieving mental health.
Yeah. It was funny because I was talking about this with a coaching client this morning about, we were talking about the body and more physiological aspects, but the same thing applies. And, I asked her, I said, have you ever tried to grow a garden on concrete? No, never. I said, what do you think would happen? Well, it just wouldn't grow. And the take home is that the soil isn't fertile. And so the same principle applies across the board, whether it's psychological health or physiological health. You need to have an environment, and you can do all the work, you can do all the steps and, work on all the pieces, journaling and meditation and goal setting. And those will absolutely help you. You're definitely better off doing those things than not doing them. So I don't want people to hear that we're saying, because the environment is super challenging right now that you give up on those things. We're simply saying, we need to recognize that there's going to be some restrictions on the ability to grow yourself mentally right now. And so if you're feeling that struggle of, man, I'm doing this work, or even worse, I'm not doing anything and I'm getting worse, part of it is you, for sure, and what you're doing or not doing. But the other part of it is you're just in a really difficult and challenging environment, which is going to make things more problematic.
Well, that's really the point of the point of the podcast, and what I'm hoping people will get from it is you need to recognize what these poisons and what these toxins in the environment are, and you need to accept the opposite idea because they're just ideas. Right, the realm of the human mind is fought in ideas, and this is we can leverage this into point number one. The way that you get hurt by bad ideas is one, you're not aware of them and you just accepted them, right? Or two, you actually believe them and they're untrue. So those are the two areas that you really have to develop it's kind of like the FedEx logo thing, right? Like once you notice that there's an arrow and a spoon in the logo, you can't unsee them, right? So you need to get that awareness. And I'm hoping that this is what this podcast or this conversation is going to provide for people, right? Is that level of awareness where they can see this and say, aha, that's what they're talking about. I need to think about that idea and whether I accept that or not. And then that's the basis that forms the potential for your mental health.
Right. Well, I guess it goes back to, and I'll just be on the opposite side and feed you some questions here. I'm thinking with the current situation, and we're talking about the challenging nature of it. Are you saying that because of the difficulties that there's nothing for people to do, or is there a place where people start? I mean, I know you're talking about awareness. Is there other things people can do? Or are we telling people just to cash it in?
No. Never, would never say that. I don't think that's ever the recipe. But I'm saying the first thing you have to start with is you have to realize that as a human being, your mind is really what sets you apart from every other animal in the animal kingdom, right? Like when we look at humans, we're not that strong. We're not that fast. We're not powerful. We can't really survive in any extreme environments, but we can. But we have this thing called the mind, right? So we're rational, right? And it's a rational ability to generate ideas, to think about things that aren't in the real world, and then base our actions on those ideas. That's what's necessary for our survival.
Right.
So mental health is really the ability to leverage that potential to the maximum. And look at what we're being told right now, right? And I'm not saying I agree or disagree, right? So please drop that from your mind, but I'm trying to show you the environment right now. So if you're a questioning person in this modern environment, automatically, without anybody even answering your questions, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. That's incompatible with creating and developing a mind capable of rational thought, right? You don't defeat somebody's bad ideas with calling them a bad name. We call that bullying for children, right? Right. If somebody's ideas are incorrect or wrong or foolish, which by the way, we've all had incorrect or wrong or foolish ideas, the way you defeat those ideas is you show them the correct ideas based on reality, not based on, force or calling them a name, right? Like, so if you accept the fact that you're a bad person because you're a conspiracy theorist, you've automatically cut off your mind, from even potentially reaching any type of mental health. Because now you feel guilty about yourself. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm having these thoughts. I'm a conspiracy theorist. You don't even really know why. And you don't even know why those ideas are bad in the first place, or if they are bad, right? So if we're trying to create an environment of mental health, we have to understand that people's minds are going to think about things that we might not agree with and have the correct answers for them, or at least for ourselves, to know why these ideas are incorrect based on reason, not based on somebody else's opinion or what some authority is telling us.
All right. Wow. Okay. So now what do we... So what do we do? Not that I don't love a good Cratio rant from time to time, but what do we do?
Well, the first thing you stop doing is telling yourself that you're wrong or stupid for feeling or thinking a certain way, right? This is really the point, right? No matter how you feel or what you think might not necessarily be incorrect, right? Like let's stop pretending like having ideas is a bad thing, right? Because if everyone who thought about killing themselves actually killed themselves, there wouldn't be many people left in the world, right? So actions are one thing, ideas are another thing. If you're still in the realm of ideas, you're safe. You should be able to accept that your mind is going to think. We all think dark thoughts. They're not bad or necessarily incorrect. We should be able to accept all these things and then understand the quality of the thought as a poor thought or a bad thought, right? So if you're having ideas and you're thinking, well, is this stuff true that they're telling us, or whether it is true, how would you find out what's the best way? And of course, it's data and what's happening in reality and being able to openly discuss with other people, right? Which is the environment that's not happening today, is my point.
Right. And so what do we do? It still comes back to, I think the challenge that people who are going to be listening are, they might say, hey, I hear what you're saying, but I'm still struggling because, I think there's some tactical things that can be done. And I'd like to tell people just to get off Facebook and social media would probably be a great place to start. Now, whether or not that's going to happen, I don't know. But if you care about your mental health, that might be a great start.
Yep. I mean, I think just exposing yourself to ideas, right? You have to, this is why proper education as a child is so important. It's learning the method by which ideas become knowledge and how we learn truth. And I mean, this is a podcast where we can't discuss that process. It's too long. It's in too much detail. It's going to distract from the actual message, right? But that's called the scientific method. That's how the human mind has learned for generations, right? You have an idea, which is your hypothesis. And you say, okay, well, this is what I think. Let's go see if this is true or not. And then you look for data in the real world on whether that's true or not. Right? That's essentially the scientific method.
Right.
So I'm going to have an idea now, right? My idea is, the earth is flat. to talk about something that's not so polarizing right now, the earth is flat. I believe that the earth is flat. Okay, great. Well, how can I go ahead and, prove that that is true? And then you listen to the arguments on both sides, right? But then you have to drop context. Like, well, we have pictures from space that the earth is round, right? Like, it's not that hard to come to that conclusion. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is true with everything else. You have to start studying and looking at the facts, but you can't be closed off from accepting certain facts and ideas. And I think that's the point, right? This is where things become challenging, is we all have our biases, right? And we all have things that we really want to be true that might not necessarily be true. So just the process of opening up and hearing other ideas and understanding that they are just ideas, but it's up to your mind to make the conclusions for yourself, right? Which brings us to point number 2. We're at a time now where we're being forced to comply to certain rules, whether they're actually in our best interest or not in our best interest, which again is not an environment conducive to, mental health. Part of being mentally healthy is being able to be responsible for the choices that you're making. Right now, we're unable to be responsible or even make certain choices for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, so now we're in a situation where I'm not allowed to choose or execute what my mind says is right for me. And I'm not open to facing or not facing those consequences. Right. So we're in this weird world where if my child answers incorrectly on the examination, I'm going to go yell at the teacher until they mark it correct. But the point is, right? Like this is the twisted reality that we're finding ourselves in, and your self-esteem is built on you taking a risk or on trying something that you might fail at or that you have failed at in the past and then succeeding. That's actually how self-esteem is created. Mm-hmm. But now we're in an environment where we're being told that if you try anything, you're going to be massively punished for trying anything.
Right.
So how does that make us mentally healthy? It doesn't. It actually contributes to the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think we've established that right now is a very difficult time to be mentally well. And I think back to, we've talked about it before, Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, and, how he was in that environment. And it was definitely not fertile ground for mental health, but he found a way to do it. And I know this is probably a common action plan that we've talked about here on Life by Design podcast before, but, I think a big part of it is making the decision that you won't be limited or you won't be held back to the best of your ability by the outside sources, right? That it is your freedom of thought, even if it is in your mind. And even if, unfortunately, your actions aren't entirely free at this point, even if it is in your mind, that's a big pivotal step forward to actually being mentally well.
Well, that's kind of what I was going at, right? Like, I mean, yes, of course, at the end of the day, nobody can take away your emotional response to what's happening. And that's really powerful leverage when you think about it. But unfortunately, you can take away, here's my point, is you, by rejecting your ideas or thinking that they're wrong or evil, just by having them, you actually have taken that power away from yourself and put yourself in the worst type of mental prison possible.
Yes. So let me see if I can put this into lay people terms. Horatio takes us down a rabbit hole, and every piece of that is important. On the surface layer, I think what the take home is, and you can give me a check mark on this, whether I'm right or wrong, Horatio, is that, really at the end of the day, whether you have the freedom or not to not restrict yourself in how you are thinking, to not tell yourself that your ideas are wrong, to, not impose on yourself the restrictions that are being imposed on you from somebody else.
Yep.
That's a big step in the right direction, right? Because that really is going back to our idea of control the controllables. That is the controllable here and really that's the nail in the coffin. If you're already telling yourself you're wrong, if you're already using outside sources to tell you that, you aren't smart, that your thoughts are incorrect, that you're not allowed to go down that path, then, I mean, you're already dead in the water.
Well, so to be clear, outside, not outside sources not being facts. If you're going to use facts and say, oh, I might have had this wrong based
yes,
on data, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I'm saying you're using other people's forceful opinions or somebody else's awful language. That's a bad barrier to tell yourself.
Right. No, and I think this is hopefully what people took away from today, because this is a really, really, it's a layered concept, complex, but at the same time, the take home point is really important, because I think a lot of people who maybe right now are struggling with mental health could turn that and flip that switch by taking some accountability and some control and saying, you know what, maybe my thoughts and what I'm thinking does have merit. And maybe it is okay that I have those thoughts. And maybe I don't need to be pushed around by what other people are saying or thinking, because I do see this right now, especially online. The online bullying is at an all-time high. Because
it's crazy.
It's crazy, right? We've been through this whole thing for the last couple of years about not bullying. And it's interesting how, people who are all about not bullying are some of the first people to be bullying, right? About people who have an idea that maybe doesn't match up with theirs. If you have a thought, it's okay to be thinking, is this thought rational and objective? And to not subject yourself automatically to believing that you're incorrect just because somebody else is forcefully telling you that. And I think that's really the take home. Did I get an A+?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, perfect. So guys, if you really want to, something that would benefit you over the next 30 days is go and take the 30-day Think by Design Challenge. It's a free challenge. It's a great program. You can opt in, and for 30 days, you'll get videos of Krisho talking about some of these concepts. And there's some homework and action steps for you to take. So instead of staying on Facebook and Instagram all day, we could actually do something that would move you towards success and get yourself prepared, because life is getting back to normal at some point, whenever that point is. And I think the people who are preparing themselves for that now are going to be, many, many steps ahead. So go to the show notes, lifebydesign.com/podcast, find today's episode, and you can find all the links there. As always, thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.